Good morning.
Good morning.
I got here, 3 whole minutes set up early this morning, so kind of late, but I guess better late than never. Patty thought I was laying in bed asleep, I think, this morning. Not a late sleeper. I think mornings I enjoy mornings better than late night. I'd rather get up and see the dawn than I would to see midnight come in anytime. Sometimes I'm not even very nice at midnight. And I'm just not a night person. We're gonna study this morning in our lesson book on page 40. It's called Elijah's Encouragement. And we usually do go back because maybe somebody else out there is like me and their memory is about as long as tap with your little finger. But we know for the last several weeks we started studying about the prophet Elijah, and that he, as did all the prophets, had a real daunting task put in front of him. He's had to call down for a famine on the country of Israel. God's trying to get their attention. They've being ruled by an evil king and queen who has led them into complete idol worship. We know that Elijah even had to build back up temples to make the sacrifice to the Lord, because I don't know if they had necessarily tore the temples to the Lord down, but we know at least they hadn't been used, so they were in a bad disrepair. We know that King Ahab and Jezebel at the helm. We're assuming that from what we've seen that possibly Ahab was a wimp, that a lot of what he was doing, he was bowing down to his wife's pressure. She apparently was a Baal worshiper or a false god worshiper from, that's just from her roots that she came. But we saw that Ahab, it seemed that Ahab kind of straddled the fence a little bit. Well, we remember while he was with Elijah when he was building up the altar, and then he eventually killed the prophets of 450 of the prophets of Baal, that Ahab was apparently there when it was going on, and he didn't stop it. So it seems like that maybe Ahab's kind of a different guy when he's away from his wife, that he allowed this to be done. But we know that Elijah had run from the king when this drought had come, because imagine a 3-year drought. We've talked about what it would do to a land for 3 years. When we sit here sometimes in the fall of the year, used to be, it seems like we get rain, which is good and very thankful. It's beautiful here right now. It's hard to keep mowed, but beautiful. We get sometimes a month, 6 weeks, 8 weeks of drought, and it gets kind of scary real fast when it gets like that. When you see cracks open in the ground and stuff, and I always, when we do that, I quit watering my flowers because I figure if water gets scarce, if there's extra water, I want my horses and animals, so these flowers can go away. But these people had endured 3 years of this drought. And they were, we know when Ahab's servant ran upon Elijah, they were out looking for water holes for, so that all the animals wouldn't die. So it's been a really hard time. The Lord has taken care of Elijah. He sent birds to feed him for some time. I don't know the exact time frame. And remember, when the Lord was ready for him to move away from that situation, he sent him to the widow woman who, when he first met him, told him, "We're starving to death. This is my last ditch effort to do something." But we saw that due to that circumstance, that not only Elijah was taken care of, but Elijah and this widow woman who was at her ends, that she was also taken care of through the Lord's hand of working with Elijah, and her son in the meantime died, and Elijah was able to bring him back. So she received blessing from caring for Elijah from that. So, we look at after they had, last week we talked about that they had burnt the sacrifices to the Lord, and we remember that the Baal worshipers jumped around all day. They set up their meat on their idols. They set it up to fire, and they weren't going to light a fire to it. They were to call down from their God to light the fire. And we remember that it said that they went from morning until the evening time, and they danced and they jumped, and nothing happened, because who were they dancing and jumping to? Baal. And they started cutting themselves and stuff, and nothing ever happened. And we remember that Elijah built his altar up, put the meat on it, poured water over it, so there was no question, put a trench of water even around the entire altar. And remember, it said when the fire came down, it not only the fire came down, which it did for Baal, but it burnt the sacrifice up, it burnt the rocks up. You know, when you look out in California, we were seeing this morning just the devastation that fires bring, just a horror. But it burned the rocks up out there. You know, there stumps and stuff. So that this was a different heavenly fire that said even licked up the dust, took up the water around it. So there was no question at the time. And we remember that once that happened, and there's a history of this, that Israelites at that time, once they saw this, that they proclaimed that Jehovah God was the Lord of the universe, and that they bowed to him, and that's when they, you know, Elijah killed the prophets of Baal and allowed this to happen. But Ahab went back, you know, and told Jezebel of this, and remember, she was furious, and she told Elijah that, you know, by this time tomorrow, you will be dead. So she wasn't there. She didn't witness all of that, but she wasn't wavering in her faith in Baal, and that she had, and I don't know, you know, maybe sometimes when you get that big position, it's not as much anymore. Maybe she was a Baal worshiper at first and still is, but you kind of get a power and authority too, where, you know, under her might, because she was mad that she would have him killed because she was the queen and apparently the ruler of the time. So it comes sometimes that we can't blame everything on the devil made me do it or whatever, that sometimes our own pride rises up so high that we think in our own power we're able to do whatever. And I would think that's where she was. So as we know, Elijah has been having to stay away from Jezebel now, because she, unlike her wimpy husband, she means business, and she's had these things too before. So the golden text for this, it says, "Rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him. Fret not thyself because of him who prospereth in his way, because of the man who bringeth wicked devices to pass." So, the Lord, as we see, has taken care of Elijah. They've been after him hard. This isn't the first time. Queen Jezebel's kind of in charge now, and it's kind of got him really discouraged. Well, let's read this, and then there was something in the last sentence in the introduction that was really good. We're going to be in 1 Kings chapter 19, and I'll read verses 9 through 21. And it says, "And he came," talking about Elijah, "thither into a cave and lodged there. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him, and he said unto him, What doest thou here, Elijah? And he said, I have been very jealous for the Lord God of hosts, for the children of Israel have forsaken thy covenant, thrown down thy altars, and slain the prophets with the sword. And I, even I only, am left, and thou seek my life to take it again? And he said, Go forth and stand upon the mountain before the Lord. And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great wind and strong wind rent the mountains and broke in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. and after the earthquake a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire, and after the fire a still small voice. And it was so when Elijah heard it, that he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood in the entry of the cave. And behold, there came a voice unto him and said, What dost thou here, Elijah? It's the second time he's asking the same question. And he said, I have been very jealous for the Lord God of hosts, because the children of Israel have forsaken thy covenant, thrown down thine altars, and slain thy prophets with the sword. And I, even I, am left, and they seek my life to take it away. So we've been asked the same question, and he gave the same answer 2 times at this point. And in verse 15 it says, And the Lord said unto him, Go return on the way to the wilderness of Damascus, and when thou comest, anoint Hazael to be king over Syria. And Jehu the son of Nimshi shalt thou anoint to be king over Israel. And Elisha, the son of Shaphat of Abel-Meholah, shalt thou anoint to be a prophet in thy room. And it shall come to pass that him that escapeth the sword of Hazael shall Jehu slay, and him that escapeth from the sword of Jehu shall Elisha slay. Yet I have left me 7,000 in Israel, all the knees which have not bowed unto Baal, and every mouth which has not kissed him. So he departed thence, and found Elisha the son of Shaphat, who was plowing with the 12 yoke of oxen before him, and he was the 12th. And Elijah passed by him and cast his mantle upon him. And he left the oxen and ran after Elijah and said, Let me, I pray thee, kiss my father and my mother, and then I will follow thee. And he said unto him, Go back again, for what have I done to thee? And he returned back with him, took a yoke of oxen, slew them, and boiled their flesh with the instruments of the oxen, and gave it to the people, and they did eat. Then he arose and went after Elijah and ministered unto him. So in the introduction, the last sentence in here says, Up, Christians, leave your caves and do not do in order to be saved, but being saved, do. So that's a call to all of us, not to stay hidden and not to keep what the promises and that the Lord has given us to ourselves hidden back in a cave. Get out and, get out into the world and share this. And that's what, he's telling Elijah to, get up and come out of this cave now. You have been in this cave. The lesson aim says, when tempted to be discouraged, remember God is near. Success in his cause is assured and work is waiting. So we all get discouraged, and we have to rise above that and know that, God has a plan. We're part of the plan. We're witnesses. We're soldiers in his army to do. And, for good soldiers, when they get down, you have to get back up again. So we need to remember that. All right. Okay. So we're starting at 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 9. And it says, And he came hither into the cave and lodged there, and behold, the Lord of the word came unto him and said unto him, What doest thou, Moses? And it says in this lesson that this might be the same cave where Moses was hidden, that the Lord passed by him, that's a possibility that it was. But we know, Elijah has been threatened by Jezebel now. We talked last week because of the things that he's done, that Elijah is probably physically, mentally, and emotionally exhausted after all this. And when you get to that point in life that you're exhausted and all that, you kind of get to a give up mentality sometimes, or you don't have the fire that you need to go on, that you kind of just need a little bit of rest and need to be by yourself and do that. And we see that it looks like that's where Elijah is at light, that he's hidden in this cave, and, he's kind of has to be thinking all of the events that happened, and, in spite of it, he says in verse 10, and he said, I have been very jealous of the Lord God of hosts, for the children of Israel have forsaken thy covenant, thrown down thy altars, and slain the prophets with the sword, and even I, am only left, and they seek my life to take it away. So, and we didn't do this. He's thinking, I've done all these things. I have, I've prophesied like the Lord told me to. These people, they forsake the Lord. I'm the only one left. There's nobody out here. Why? And you have to get real. Why do I keep trying when nothing's changed? I've tried. I've done everything. I've done what you've asked me to do, and it's the same. And it says in verse 11, and he said, go forth and stand upon the mountain before the Lord, and behold, the Lord passed by. And a great and strong wind rent the mountains and brake in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind, and after the wind an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. So, I guess why I like to read something better than to see it on TV, because in your mind you can just imagine being there and what happens. But, you think you're in a cave back in the side of a mountain, and the Lord tells you not to, arise and come out. And then he comes out and he stands in the cave, and it says this wind, it says, and a great strong wind rent the mountains and break in pieces the rocks before the Lord. So that's pretty powerful. You see wind that blows and moves and turns cars and stuff, but it's saying that it's breaking the rocks into pieces like it's pulverizing. So that this is a severe wind. It says, let me see, break into pieces, but the Lord was not in the wind, and after the wind an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. So we say we've just seen a tornado come through here, and we're kind of reeling from a tornado that's very distressful, what's happened. And then immediately after that, an earthquake hits. I mean, it's has to get your attention of what's going on. In verse 12 it says, and after the earthquake, a fire. So it's just like disaster, disaster, disaster. That's what they were talking on TV this morning, that, we've had the hurricane come in, we've had the fires, we've had the floods. It's just like the country is just kind of reeling from one disaster. And it says, and after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was still not in the fire. And after the fire, a still small voice. So, in the midst of all that turmoil that's going on, that still small voice of the Lord, the Lord has been with Elijah. He has made sure that he's taking care of it. He sent the angels to minister to him. We had studied last week. So in the middle of all this, he's never left him. It seems that Elijah couldn't hear him for a while. And that's what sometimes with us. But he's always been there. If we, and it's easy to look outside of something and see more than look from your life to see. And, sometimes you think, is the Lord there?
I like that. Still small voice. Lord, you see a lot of things, but when it comes to that still small voice, it's not big and loud and everything, but it's him. Mm-hmm. He does.
And you have to be there to listen, because it's not this earthquake, this raging, and so that's a good point. It's a small voice.
And I think of that too in services, which we don't see a whole lot anymore, but people shouting and praising the Lord was there. But then I've been in services where they're not saying much, but you can just feel the Spirit moving in. Nothing really looks like happened, but he's still there. I'm glad he comes in different ways.
Yeah.
Every way is real.
Like you say, and you just know it's like that. It just comes over. It's kind of a hush, and a calm that comes over.
He comes the way we need him.
You could be sitting at home, you can feel the Spirit of God there at home.
Yes, right.
And you could be watching the gospel, singing or anything there at home. You can feel it.
Right.
I can
You know
remember.
when he's present.
Yes, you can.
I can remember driving back and forth to work and, and singing Christian songs, and you're driving down the road, your hands raised, and you're thinking, people passing by, it's like, what's that doing over there? But it doesn't matter where you are, that he's able to come to you, and those are the best times.
You
When,
mentioned that about driving down the road, maybe putting up your hand. I read something on Facebook one time. Of course, I'm not a big fan of Facebook or believing everything, but anyway, this spoke to me. This person said something about they pulled up to a stoplight, and there was this man. And, he was doing all that, and she was just glad that he was expressing it. So she felt it was of the Lord, and didn't know him. And then another vehicle bed, you can just sense around on the Lord there. You can just sense it.
realize what
You tell him
he's
he's not, too.
Yeah. They, I know there's
Let me
been,
correct that. He's always there, but sometimes we don't feel it. We don't recognize it.
right.
Yeah.
Right. We're too busy in our own turmoil, I think, or fixing stuff on our own. A couple nights I can remember, I can't remember her name, Jeremiah Yoakum that preaches. There was a song, I think, I played it one time with Rhonda. But the night that I was trying to learn that song, I was listening to it on YouTube and trying to learn it. I had church at home by myself in my living room, and I had stayed up real late, but I was doing it. And sometimes I know a couple Saturday nights I've turned on and they've had, it's called an international revival or something like that. But, nobody has to be with you, but just the most, and even over the TV and these broadcasts, it's like I'm there with them, and it's been some of the best times. And I'm just there in the living room by myself, and these people are thousands of miles away, but something that's been taped probably, it's not like it's live right then, but if you listen for the Lord and are available to him too, I think, you have to be, he doesn't shove himself down our throats. I think we have to be available and looking for him.
And listen to YouTube. I turn that on every night before the bed. And it's strange, you can see, some people are, you look at their faces, it shows the people around you, like you've seen those quartets, those things like that. And you can tell when you see some of them, you can just sense that who's really believing what they're saying. Some that just kind of go through the motions, but then I can feel it. I'm just like you, sometimes I sit and cry and thank the Lord and pray for it, right there in the chair.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't have to be in a crowd.
You can just, Lord, I'm glad that he gives us a sense of realizing, that's not the word I want, I can't think of the word right now, but we have the discernment of the Spirit. He gives us some seem like got more than others than I have, but he helps us to realize the right from the wrong, and the good from the bad, and those we just sense it.
And we probably all need to pray for more and more discernment. I know my daughter's accused me before of that I'm real gullible with people, that, if somebody tells me something that I don't want to change, and I don't want to be suspicious of everybody. I don't want to be different and assume somebody's something to, when I first knew them. But, I know I always be more discernment and not always be too trusting, but I don't want to go in the other way either. to go, but, you know, the Lord will take care of us. And like you say, by yourself, I have wanted, I guess, COVID when you thought, no, you can't do. But I would just, I've always thought that it would be so much fun if all the churches in the area participated and we were all sitting out at Lincoln County High School in the football field having a great big revival. If we were all singing together, all worshiping together, all the churches, you know, no denomination, it don't matter where you come, if there was just Stanford was piled up out there, would be the most fun. And now I'm thinking, you know, not just one time if we did it. You know, as long as we could during the summer, like people do football games, why can't we, you know, go and do that? But, you know, their worship is good by yourself, and it's also good corporate. We've talked about how much church is kind of like a charging base that you can go. And you know, and I found because TV is, I don't know if I told y'all this last week, but I flipped my TV on the other morning, and it was on, I think, channel 106 TV Land, which usually has got Andy Griffin. Tommy was watching Andy Griffin, so that day I just flipped it on. And South Park, this show that's been on forever, it was on. And within seconds of me turning that TV on, they said, and not in a good way, oh God, and then something, and then they took the Lord's name in vain, and it went, I'm kind of there, and I was so stunned, it was happening so fast, I couldn't, because I was going to change it. It was like, I couldn't get it changed. It was, you know, and I'm thinking, why? And this is a cartoon. Why would they allow? But you know that they want to put the Lord down. Boy, they did it within seconds. They had done it over and over. But that, you know, so it's good. We have to keep our mind, and that's why I kind of always keep my TV all day long. I kind of in the mornings and leave it on the Christian network and hear it, because there's hardly anything on the others that's worth watching. They take every strike out toward Christianity, the Lord, that they can. And every opportunity, even on shows, and I think I've said before that you wonder why they throw that comment in, because it has nothing to do with the context of the show, that all of a sudden you just heard them do a strike against Christianity, and you're thinking, what has this to do with anything that's going on? So it's hard to stay separate from the world. And you know, and the Lord is telling us here also, though, when the first thing I said, that in their introduction, leave your caves and get out. So he doesn't want us to hide ourselves and be separate, but we most definitely need to keep our hedge of protection around us, because it's hard to live otherwise, and harder every day to live in this world. And in verse 13 it says, and so it was when Elijah heard it, that he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood into the entering in the cave. And behold, there came a voice unto him and said, what doest thou here, Elijah? So he's hearing the same thing again. And as we said, he said, I have been very jealous for the Lord God of hosts, because the children of Israel have forsaken thy covenant, and thrown down thy altars, and slain thy prophets with the sword, and even I am left, and they seek my life to take it away. So he said the same thing, and you know, it's really gnawing on me that I'm the last prophet that's left alive, and you know, the loneliness. You see in that I'm only left. I've done all I can do. And it said in verse 15, and the Lord said unto him, go, return on the way to the wilderness of Damascus, and when thou comest, anoint Hazael to be king over Syria. And Jehu the son of Nimshi shall thou anoint to be king over Israel. And Elisha the son of Shaphat and Abel Mahloah thou shalt anoint to be prophet in thy room. So the Lord is telling, get up, get out of the cave, I got work for you to do. he's already had work for him to do, and it's been some pretty tough stuff, so, in human form, Elijah has to be thinking, what's this gonna get into, once I do this? But, we know it, and sometimes we get in a hard spot, but the Lord knows the future. The Lord has the future plan, and he's having Elijah to do these things to set the future as he has it in his hands established. Elijah doesn't know. He just knows what he's been told to do. And sometimes we want to get ahead and know these things, but we don't know the full picture. And it says, and it shall come to, let me see. Yeah, it shall know unto the prophet. Sorry, I'm getting one. Verse 17 says, and it shall come to pass that him that escapeth the sword of Hazael shall Jehu slay, and him that escapeth the sword of Jehu shall Elisha save. So he is setting up this land to go as he has preordained it, that things would do. And in verse 18 it says, yet I have left me 7,000 in Israel, all the knees which have not bowed unto Baal, and every mouth which hath not kissed me. So he is assuring Elijah of something that he don't know at this time, that he is not the only one that's left, that he has left 7,000 people that have not bowed unto Baal, where it says in every mouth which has not kissed him. So that should have encouraged him, you would think, to now know that, I'm not the only one, that there's 7,000 believers that he's actually left out with you.
Sometimes if we let ourselves win, we're the only ones having this problem. We're the ones going through that. We're the only ones. But we're not.
And you can sink deeper in that, can't you, if you can get in your mind that I'm God, yes.
The best thing to do is remember what God has done, he's still doing it.
Yes, yes. And at times it's hard to be there. And starting in verse 19, it says, so he departed thence. So he got up and left. He didn't drag his feet then, like Eddie's doing right now. It says, so he departed thence and found Elisha. So now I'm really going to get them confused, y'all. I've been calling Elijah all along now, so y'all just have to correct me. It says, and found Elisha, the son of Shaphat, who was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen before him, and he with the 12th, and Elijah passed by him and cast his mantle upon him. So, the Lord had told him to go find the help to go and anoint Elijah as his helper. So they knew that, he's out there plowing in the field, and Elijah comes by and he throws this mantle, and they knew, in the land what that meant, that signified that, I have anointed you to be in the line of prophets. And in verse 20, and it says, and he left the oxen and ran after Elijah and said, let me, I pray thee, kiss my father and my mother, and then I will follow thee. And said unto him, go back again, for what have I done to thee? So he didn't throw the mantle down and say, I'm not a prophet, I'm just a plowboy out here in the field. He immediately came up to Elijah and accepted the mantle that he had given him. And he asked him, let me go back home and let me tell my parents and my family that I'm leaving and what's going on. And, I thought it had the verses in here that I had marked. Oh, yes. In Luke 9:59 through 61. I'm going to look at that. Okay, and I'm reading from, Luke 9, starting in verse 59. And this is Jesus talking. It says, then he said to another, follow me. But he said, Lord, let me first go and bury my father. Jesus said unto him, let the dead bury their own dead, but you go and preach the kingdom of God. So, and I remember first seeing this, and it's like, wow, he can't go to his father's funeral. He's telling him to go to his funeral, and that's kind of hard. That don't even go to his funeral. But this man wasn't asking to go to his father's funeral. He was, his father wasn't dead at the time. He was putting off the call. He was saying, once I'm doing this, and once I've done, and my family, and I've got these things and square, once I've got everything straightened up, kind of like, people think before they come to the Lord, you feel the pull of the Lord to come to the altar and give your life to Him, but you're thinking, but Lord, I cuss sometimes, and I drink, and I have some really bad friends, and as soon as I get that taken care of, I will lay on that altar and I will come to you. And, that's not what He's asking us to do. He's asking us to come just the way we are. That's not for us to go fix. And we see here Elijah has accepted that. He's a plowman, he's a farmer, apparently, which I'm not putting down farmers at all because I think they're the noblest of the noblest. But, he doesn't shy away from it. And it says in verse 21, and he returned back from him and took a yoke of oxen and slew them and boiled their flesh with the instruments of the oxen and gave it to the people, and they did eat. Then he arose and went after Elijah and ministered unto him. So he accepted that mantle. He said, let me go back and let me kiss my family goodbye. He slayed the oxen. They had a goodbye feast for him. And he was Elijah's man from that time on. And, you read ahead in the story, it was a very good choice for him. As great a prophet as Elijah was, Elisha was more that he got from that. So sometimes we get in hard times as Elijah has, but we don't see the end result. That the Lord has much greater things, and we're probably going to go through, as we had read earlier, we're going to go through the windstorm that breaks the rocks apart. We're going to go through the earthquakes in life, and we're going to go through all these things, but there's a reward at the end. Okay. Let me see. We're a little bit early. I'll do a couple questions, and we'll get a minute of rest. Thank you, Lord. So, we started it off at the beginning that said that the Lord told Elijah, what are you doing in this cave? Why are you hiding back in the cave? And it says, how does Elijah answer? And remember, he said, I've done what you told me to do. I've gone and I've preached to these people, and the king and the queen are after me to kill me. I've done everything you said, and I'm in a bad place right here. He feared for his life big. We had talked about the king had been after him during the drought, but even worse than that now, the puppet master Jezebel, the wife of the king, was after him now even. So he had made everybody in the highest places as mad as they could possibly be, and he is hiding in this cave from them. And the Lord comes to him too. And it says, what did God use to get Elijah's attention? We had talked about he used the wind and the earthquake and the Patty, but that. Yes, he he did all these major events and the earthquakes and the winds and the fire. But what finally got him was the still small voice of the Lord that he heard. And you know, Patty brought out that the Lord don't always shout at us and knock on our head and say, is anybody home? It's that still small voice that speaks to our heart that we need to listen.
That reminds us to be careful of listening. When he speaks.
Not be too busy that we can't hear. It says, what remedies did God use for Elijah's discouragement? How did he help him? We remember, Elijah was hidden in 7. Then he came out and he gave him these jobs that he was to do because there was coming a reckoning day for Jezebel and Ahab. Elijah didn't have a clue at this time. The Lord told him to go out and to anoint Jehu shall anoint king over Israel. So he's having Elijah anoint people and put them in their places, and he has no clue what's going on. But he encouraged him he says, yet I have left me 7,000 in Israel, all whose knees have not bowed unto Baal. So he's encouraging Elijah by saying, you're not by yourself. There's lots more people just like you. And like Patty said, a lot of times if we think something terrible's happened to us, and and I could tell you a perfect example this morning, but I'll start crying. We're not the only one that these things are happening to, and God encourages him now by, he's thinking he's one person out there, but he's saying there are 7,000 people surrounding you that you don't even know about that have not bowed to these gods. And it says, what assurances showed that Elisha accepted God's call wholeheartedly. So he'd thrown the mantle on Elisha, and he did the things that we knew that he meant business, and that he was throwing off his old life and stepping into. And think of this, he was stepping into a new life with this prophet who was on the run from the king and the queen. So he's not only accepted, say if Buford said, I'm leaving and I'm throwing the mantle of preacher on Robert's back. and the church was all good and the church was going well and everything, and it's fine. But, he was leaving and he had thrown the mantle on it, and he was going to be walking with a wanted man at that time. But, Elijah had to have felt the pull from the Lord to do that. I just don't think that anybody at this point in the right mind, out of no call from the Lord whatsoever, would have joined up with somebody that Jezebel and Ahab was bound to kill. And we had talked about before y'all came, if you remember last week, Jezebel had told Elijah once, they told him, "Keep by tomorrow, I'll kill you." And so so he's joined up with that man to do that. All right, that's the end of our lesson. Anybody have anything to add or?
When God's got something, he wants that. Nobody can That's what I got.
No matter what circumstances are right here in front of us, it won't be stopped. Well, thank you all for listening.